Hello, hello, as everyone's coming in. Um, your audio should be kicking in here in a minute. If you are just now joining us, and if you're familiar with Zoom, if you're able to go ahead and change your name if you haven't, so whatever name you go by normally, so we can find you on your interest form, that would be helpful. And if you're able to turn on cameras, we'd love to see you. These kind of meetings are perfect in living rooms, but the nature of the kind of work we're doing with house churches, we know that people are joining from different states and countries all over. So unfortunately, we can't be in the room with you. So we're gonna make the best we can. So if you have questions, I see your question in the chat, D. We're gonna be jumping in to help you. Can you hear us now? With audio, yeah, you can hear me. You can just.
I can hear you. I was Kiara, I think her name is. She said she couldn't hear anything.
I see it now.
Yes, sir.
Kiara, can you hear us? Oh, she's joining back in. I think she's gone.
Okay.
Thank you. Good to see you again, D. How are you?
Doing well, sir. Good to see everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all.
Victoria, how are you? I'm Aaron. Nice to meet you. So everybody else, if you're able to join us with you turning on your cameras, we'd love to see you. If you need to rename yourself or anything like that, please do. My name is Aaron Bourne. I'm one of the pastors here at Victory Church. I'm joined with Eric and Jewel Cha and Lyndon Carr, who all serve different roles on staff and have led different ministries of the church. And we're all kind of a new team formed to help us launch house churches, a brand new movement here at Victory, and a very ancient movement in the history of Christianity. So we're excited to be here and learn with you guys. I'm going to give us a couple minutes because I know people are joining in, they're coming from work and all that sort of thing. But maybe I can go around. Let's see, gentleman right here. Is that Bobby? Who first valet? Who is that? Is that Bobby?
Yeah, that's Bobby.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Bobby. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good, man. Good. So just to avoid any confusion, Victoria is my wife, and she's in Jamaica. So
well, nice to meet you. I've met Bobby several times. I have never met you. I don't know of officially anyway.
No, first time meeting.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I see Miss Kiara's profile picture. And some of these hey,
hi everyone.
How are you? Good to see you.
Good here.
I see Jada. Is that Jada from New York? Is that where you're calling from, Jada? Oh, hold on a second. I gotta meet you. Hold
on. I'm from Georgia, but right now I'm in Ohio.
Ohio, that's where it was. I knew it was north of here. I couldn't remember which direction. But it's good to see you.
Jada and I actually went to college together.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Jada.
Let's see, Miss Benita, how you doing today?
How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Miss Roma, can you hear us okay? Miss Stevenson, you hear us okay too? All right,
I can hear you guys well.
Okay, awesome. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump in prayer, and I want to honor y'all's times. I know this is the time of day when people are trying to eat dinner and see family and all that. And so I want to honor time, but I know that what we're talking about tonight is extremely important and timely, and I want to leave us time for that. So Eric, would you just kick us off by praying over the meeting tonight?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's pray. God, Father, we acknowledge you. We give you all the glory. And God, as we spend the next few minutes here together, I just pray that you would give us ear to hear what the Spirit of the Lord is saying, hearts that are soft and just ready to be positioned to be used by you. God, we're so grateful that you delight in us, but that you also desire to use us as a part of your plan, the Great Commission. And so, God, as we enter into this new season, God, we're endeavoring to plant the gospel, not not just in homes, but in every neighborhood that would ultimately go out to their cities, states, and all throughout the nations, Lord. So I'm grateful. We're grateful for every individual here. I just pray for this meeting. And as we listen, Lord, I just pray that we're just not listening just based on just interest, but that we would listen to hear, God, are you calling me to do this? God, I pray that you would give every individual the ears to hear that from you. So we're grateful. We love you. Pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I see a couple more people have joined us, and we'll probably have some more jumping in along the way. We are recording this, so we'll edit it. And if you know people that had signed up, if you have friends that joined up and they weren't able to make it, hopefully we can send this out to them and they can still have a chance to watch the interest meeting and then follow the next steps before we launch training next month. So I'm going to dive right in. So again, my name's Aaron Bourne. I've been on staff at Victory for coming up on 7 years in January. Been attending Victory for 8 years and got to serve in a lot of different teams: parking lot, ushers, greeters, security, service coordinating, all that fun stuff. And my wife, Natalie Bourne, is also on staff. She's over the marketing and strategy team and has been at Victory for 22 years. So she's a true Victory child. We met in youth group, but the reason why I'm passionate about what we're doing is actually several reasons. One, my parents were church planners and missionaries. So we lived in South Korea for a little bit when I was very little. My mom went to the mission field when she was 14 to St. Croix for 10 years and also Mexico. So that was in my blood a little bit. We always were in houses and doing ministry up and down the East Coast, and churches were usually never bigger than 40 or 50 people. And so I grew up that way, and that was kind of normal for me. At the same time, I also got to grow up in larger churches as well. My dad played music, and they ended up planting a church in Clarkston, which is a very diverse community. And so that was sort of just in my DNA. And then got into men's ministry. We didn't have one at Victory, so got to help build that and create that, and discovered I really like going places where nobody else wants to go and doing things where other people don't want to do. And I realized that I kind of have a little bit of a pioneer in my system. And in church world, we call that the apostolic. And we believe that a lot of people that are going to be drawn to this work have a little bit of that in them as well, that we don't always rely on things being comfortable, and we don't always have to have a trail cut out for us. We're willing to go and blaze one for other people to follow. And so if that's like you a little bit, you're going to love this. If you didn't know that was in you, you may discover it was. You may just realize that you're just a person who loves people and you're extremely hospitable and you just want to love your neighbors. And you may get pulled into some pioneering along the way because you didn't know that. But either way, I believe that everyone that has responded, and we've had over 100 people sign up that wanted to learn more about house churches, which is just mind-blowing. In America, this is not a very common thing, but if you look around the world, this is the way the majority of the world does church. And so I believe that God has been doing something unique in America. We're seeing a lot of large churches and a lot of other communities begin to look at this. I think COVID changed things a lot and woke us up that if the doors of your church building close, your church needs to know that there's still a church. And we also realized that 60% of America, based off surveys and the Barna Institute put out, that 60% of Americans have said they will never walk into a church building. They are absolutely not open to it. So 40% are open to it. Doesn't mean that they are currently walking into church buildings, but at least they're open to the idea of it. And so most of our institutional or traditional church models are aimed at reaching the 40% of Americans that are open to this idea. But like I said, the majority of Americans are not even open to attending church anymore. And that number is going up every year as we're living in that post-Christian, postmodern society. And so because of that, the church has traditionally here in the West been modeled for kind of a come and see type model. We call that an attractional model. You know, we get you to go get your neighbors and friends and bring them to the church. We put on events that are attractive, and we try to build services that will bring people to the church so they can hear the gospel. But there's a big part of the gospel where Jesus gives the Great Commission that says, go and tell, go and make disciples. And that's the missional part. And that's the part that Victory is really wanting to turn its sights towards, is how are we going to reach people that are not going to come to us? How can we go to them and not be religious? How can we meet them without an agenda other than to love them and connect with them and be friends with them and meet them where they're at? Which leads me to, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to share my screen and read to you guys kind of the vision and mission statement of what we're doing with Victory House Churches. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly so that we can get to the discussion and questions, which is really the fun part. So, all right. The vision is very simple, simply stated, not simply executed. It's to see the gospel planted in every single neighborhood. And the mission is we send ordinary people into the places that they live, work, and play to bless others so that spiritual families may form and churches emerge. So the truth is, we're not here to plant churches. We're here to plant the gospel. And then as relationships happen, as spiritual conversations happen and friendships begin to forge, then you look around and you begin to have a spiritual family. It's brothers and sisters and moms and grandmoms and fathers all beginning to do life together and worship together. And then they realize, hey, I believe we're a church. And we're going to look at what those requirements are here and a little bit of what makes a church. But that acronym BLESS is not one that we created. It's one that's been around for a while. There's a book called BLESS that we're going to give you guys, written by John and Dave Ferguson, that actually talks through how to do these 5 steps in your community. And that's really the foundational part of the house church training. Is we're really training people to be missionaries in their own community, in their own neighborhood and context first. And then we will work later on how to shepherd and how to pastor people and things like that. But step 1 is just living a missionary lifestyle with a missionary mindset. So it's taking things like cutting the grass and walking the dog, and now it's doing it with a missionary mindset and with great intentionality that every time I step out of my house, there's an opportunity for me to bless people. So there's this statement right here that says the missional church is incarnational, not attractional in its ecclesiology. By incarnational, what we mean is it does not create sanctified spaces into which unbelievers must come to encounter the gospel. Rather, the missional church disassembles itself and it seeps into the cracks. I love that word. Seeps into the cracks and crevices of a society in order to be Christ to those who don't yet know him. And that comes out of the book, The Shaping of Things to Come by Michael Frost and Alan Hirsch. And that's really what it is. Jesus, you know, his name, one of his names is Emmanuel, God with us. And that to me is what the missional church is. That's what house churches are at Victory, is it's Jesus moving into the neighborhood and being with people. So if you take all Victory, the things that we love of Victory, the classes and the programs and the worship and everything else, and we strip it all down, what's left is the bare minimum, the irreducible minimum of what we call church, and that's worship, community, and mission. And by worship, what I mean by that is that can be singing songs the way we're used to. It can be taking communion, sharing our testimony. It can be being out in creation. It can be praying for each other. It's every act and form of worship in which we're acknowledging God and giving glory to him. And we would probably give a list of here's best practices of what we consider worship, but we gather for the purpose of worship. And our mission is to turn the whole world into worshipers of God. That's the mission. Now, what I'll say is every house church, every one of these communities is going to have a unique mission that they feel called to. It may be transforming your neighborhood. It may be like taking care of the elderly in your senior center, or, you know, packing up backpacks for elementary school kids that can't afford their own. So your house church or community may have a certain mission that group feels called to really take on. And what makes this different than a small group is the fact that house churches, by Victory standards, house churches are aimed at being missional and evangelistic. We are intentionally trying to reach the people that are outside the church, not the people that are already inside the church. So that's a massive difference. It doesn't mean that small groups don't do that. We have wonderful small groups that may do all of these things. What it comes down to is the designated purpose of a house church versus the designated purpose of a small group. You can have a house church and have small groups in it. If I had a house church of 20 people, I may have a men's small group, a women's small group. I may split them up into 3 or 4 just co-ed small groups that break into Bible studies, but small groups are part of a church for the purpose of community and discipleship. But the purpose of a house church, or the purpose of the church globally, is to go and make disciples, go and reach the lost. So the best way to make disciples is to plant a church. And for us, It's going to be to build relationships, see families be formed, and then watch that church come together. So those are the values: worship, community, and mission. The scriptures that really back this up, that there's the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19 says, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit." We see what this looks like in the book of Acts, both in chapters 2 and chapters 5. So in chapters 2, 46 and 47, it says they worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper and shared meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day, the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. So what I love about this is there are some house church people that will just say, this is the only way. House churches is the only way to worship God. And then there are big churches that'll say, no, this is the only way. And we see clearly in Acts that they were doing both. They were gathering corporately in worship, listening to the apostles' teaching, and then they were applying it, sharing meals together, doing life together, and reaching their community in house churches as well. And so, and then in Acts chapter 5, it says, every day in the temple and from house to house, they continue to teach and preach this message: Jesus is the Messiah. And my favorite verse, the one I skipped over, that I love picturing, is the one, the message paraphrase of it is John 1:14a. That says, the word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And I just love that, because when I think about house churches, that's really what it is. It's Jesus putting on flesh and moving into the neighborhood and being a neighbor to these people and meeting them right where they're at, not bringing religiousness to them, not bringing a ritual or service. It's bringing just life on life relationship. So that is the mission and vision of house churches. And the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our strategy. And hopefully, if you're thinking about things while I'm talking, feel free to send questions. You can direct message them to Eric and Joel. They're in here. You can drop them in the chat. So be thinking about things that you'd like to know about. You can make them public or private. It doesn't make a difference to me. We're going to spend half of our time talking about your questions and discussing things. I'm going to lay out next a little bit about the strategy of what you can expect, and then we're going to turn it over and make this a little bit more interactive, if that works. So the next thing I want to share with you guys is our strategy. So we're already in the middle of step 1. In fact, we are actually in overtime because we added an additional interest meeting tonight. And we're talking about why house churches and what is a house church. Oh, I didn't really tell you why Victory is doing it. I told you a little bit about why, and you may have heard Pastor Johnson talk about it. If you watch the video link that we sent out on the house church page, he shared a little bit there. But really, when he started talking about this, and I heard him talking about this in 2019, he was saying, I don't want Victory to be a church with thousands of people in the bleachers watching the game. I want to put everybody on the field. And he's like, there's not supposed to be this gap between staff and congregation, or between professional clergy and what we call laity. It's like the pastorhood of every believer. So Jesus came to tear down the veil and said, all of us are called to be priests. All of us are called to pastor, maybe not take on a full-time occupational role. But if you study church history in the 1500s, Martin Luther basically started Reformation by going to the Catholic Church and saying that, hey, we don't necessarily need a priest. The Bible should be in the words for everybody to read. We don't have to go through another man to connect with God. And so today, I feel like in a sense, a little bit is this, going to the people and making them realize you don't have to be a professional staff member to minister. You don't have to quit your job and your career. That if God called you, and he may have called you exactly where you're placed. And so that's a big part of it right there. The other part is he wanted people to pastor their own neighborhoods and equip them. And he has this vision of Victory not just being a place that people go to, but actually being like a hub, a resource center. So when I think about campuses, I think about these house churches being kind of pioneers on the frontier, and the campuses being like the fort or the outpost where you come back to get resupplied, fed, shelter, and then they send you back out to the frontier where you are. And so we want our house churches to stay connected to online campus or Norcross or Hamilton Mill, whatever your campus is, where you're being fed, cared for, coming and experience corporate worship, experiencing leadership training and all that. And then you're going back into your community to share that with the people that you can reach. So that's a big part of the why behind what we're doing, is to empower the people, and to reach the lost in the communities. So we're finishing the recruiting phase of this, and we're getting ready to step into the training phase, which is what we're looking at right now is 3 training sessions till the end of the year, October 9th, November 6th, and December 4th. Those are all Sundays. We're going to be teaching basically know God, know yourself, know people. And so what we're going to be doing is giving you tools and making you aware of tools and different mindsets, and then having you apply it. So what we'd like to do is place everyone in a peer-to-peer cohort, kind of, whether they will hopefully be regionally based, or if you're remote, you'd be online based with our cohorts from other states and countries. And that could be for accountability, to have people praying with you, to share what your challenges are and best practices. Eventually, we want to raise coaches up to kind of support in an elder kind of way. To their job is just to pastor you as a pastor. Their job is just to help support you, hopefully come and visit some of your services at times and support you the same way that if you've been a small group leader and you've experienced that, I would say that, but we would want to elevate all of it, elevate the support, elevate the leadership, elevate the coaching, because we know that this isn't easy work. So some of these tools I wouldn't necessarily expect you to be familiar with, but that's just kind of a sampling of some of the things we're going to cover in training. And then the third phase will be launch day. And that'll be an all-day event on Saturday, January 7th, because on the next day, Sunday, January 8th, Pastor Johnson's going to be talking about house churches actually being active. And some people may already have active house churches at that time that he's going to speak about in the middle of the service. And the thing about that is we recognize that everyone's context is unique. Some of you already know your neighbors. You've already been doing this work naturally. And for you may just be turning the light switch on and you're open for business. Others, like me, I've been spending most of my time ministering at Victory the last 7 years. My relationships with my neighbors are probably not a place where I can say, hey, want to come watch a church service with me? And, I have to build up to that. I can have them over for dinner, but we're not ready to dive into that. So we're all going to be in different phases and stages. And then after we finish that launch on January 8th, then you would remain in your cohort to be coached and having ongoing training, because there's so much we're going to constantly be learning always, just like I do as a pastor on staff. I'm constantly getting new books and things, learning how to do forward, learning how to do missions. And I just spent a lifetime of learning and getting better at ministry. And that's usually what it means to follow Jesus, is constantly learning, constantly growing. So I believe most of you received these links last night in an email I sent. We can also share them in the chat again if you'd like them, or we can email them to you. Just ask for it if you didn't receive it before. But I definitely want to make both of those documents available to each of you. And with that being said, I think at this point, I'd like to get into a little more discussion, because I know there's a whole lot more I can say, but I'd rather say the things that you really want to hear. So let's, does anybody have any questions that come in, Eric?
Hey, Aaron. Yeah. So really quick, guys, just really quick house rules, or, Zoom room rules kind of. If you guys can kind of still stay muted, just in case, if you guys go all unmute, will be like feedback everywhere. So either you can post your questions on the chat directly to us, whatever. But to get things started, there is one question that was posted on the chat. It was by Victoria. And the question was, will the training be available online?
Yes. Okay, great. So we are currently, there's several things happening here. I was just in a meeting this morning about it, which, so we are currently working in building classrooms at the Norcross campus that we'll actually be able to have these meetings live in person. Our intent is to be able to stream them and record them as well. And so this first one, October 9th, I don't think the room's gonna be ready yet. So we'll probably still be down the hill in the chapel down there, but we are gonna record it. And our intent is to live stream it and to have an online host while we're doing that. So that's October 9th. And my hope is that every training session we get better and better. I'm going to ask for a lot of grace, because there is absolutely zero precedent for this. So, we will, if things don't work, if it wasn't a good experience, then we absolutely welcome your feedback to improve it, because we realize, again, there's people joining from all over the world. And you guys are actually our inaugural first generation of house church planners that would be going through this. And so it's a real cool privilege for all of us to get to do this together, and we'll figure it out as we go. But yes, live streaming, in person, and recorded.
Cool. We got a question. I see your hand, Bobby. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Oh, you're unmuted.
Okay. My question is, will there be the potential to, will there be staggered start launch dates? Like if we're not ready on January, the 7th, would that be okay to launch later?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bobby. And thank you for asking. There's a couple different things here. One, I recognize the fact that I didn't even describe the mode to you of how the house church is going to work in its first iteration. So I need to do that. The second part is, this initial training is really what I would just call missionary training in a sense, of how to win over your neighbor, and especially in a Western context. And so people can start doing that even if they're not ready to plant house churches, even if they're like, hey, I don't know if it's the right season. I would say still go through the training, start living out the practices. For some of us, it could take a year or two because we're building relationships without an agenda. So it's not like knocking on doors and handing out tracts and getting people to come to church. This is my neighbor that I have to build a relationship with and get to a level of trust where we can naturally talk about my faith and it not feel like a sales pitch or me trying to get a response from them. So some of us have already done that kind of work, and others we're just starting out. And so the time frame is going to be all across the board. What I would say January 8th is, because I had to kind of push back with this a little bit too, to make it clear that people understood this doesn't mean January 8th, everybody's a house church and we all launched. This means that the house church initiative has gone live, is really what it means. And that we are all beginning to do the work of church planners. And if you've known a church planner or been in the church plant, it's hard, slow work. But I believe that God's going to kiss it and we're going to see favor that more so than we imagine. But I also want to set expectations that it's not that anyone here may not open their door and their house is just jammed full. I would say, let's set the expectation of, I may reach one person every few months. We may get some breakthrough here and some breakthrough there, but it's going to look different than what we experience on Sundays at a campus. And we have to give ourselves like permission to dream that way about the one versus necessarily for me, my goal is not to have my living room explode and then have to build a campus here in my neighborhood. Like that's not my goal. I'm not saying that won't happen to anybody, but that's not why we're doing this. In fact, our goal really is multiplication and getting more and more people involved. So setting those expectations early on, I think takes a lot of pressure off of us. And really, it's all his church anyway. So I don't have to prove anything to him or anybody else. Yes, some people will start right away. Another thing is we're going to encourage people to find other people to plant with them, like at least another person or another couple. Some of you, if you live near each other, you may be able to do it together. Like if you're in Lawrenceville here in Georgia, there may be another couple or two, and you guys may be in a cohort together. And we may say, okay, 4 of us are going to support house church number 1 while he gets going. And then once he gets going, 3 of us are going to support house church number 2, and so on and so on. And it may look like that, where we kind of are building a planning team. Here's another thing. When it comes down, so the model would be, we're training you to be missionaries. Hopefully you're in a cohort or you've got some relationships you're going to build in your neighborhood, and you're going to become a missional community, a community that's on mission for their neighborhood, on mission for the people in their community. And then as we begin to see those spiritual families form of, I'm inviting people, we're having great block parties, dinner parties, watching a Super Bowl together, watching a Christmas service. Now we're starting to build relationships. Yeah, like we should be known for the best party people in the community. Jesus went to all the parties. So yeah, I see you. You're logging on. Okay, cool, no problem. You can absolutely jump in on the phone. That's no problem. So we want to throw great parties. We want to find ways to, and here's another thing. A lot of people who aren't Christians love to do outreaches. They love to serve. They love to partner with social justice. So you may get them working side by side with you before they'll ever come to a church service with you. And so there's all kinds of just knowing your environment and your context and figuring that out. But the biggest thing is not getting discouraged if we open up shop and it's not full. And the mode, oh yeah, so here's the thing. So here's what, so planning as a missionary, form a missional community. And then when you've got 3 or more households meeting together for a period of at least 3 months, regularly, then we would say, okay, you're a house church. You finished the training. You've gone through all the preliminary stuff. You've been meeting with at least 3 other households. So it's not just you and your kids, and you're meeting regularly with a rhythm and repetition. Then we'd say, okay, this is a church. We now have that model. So, and it's no pressure to get to there. And then what we'd say is when your church begins to have addition, then we would remind you that, remember, and we have to say this a lot with small group leaders, the goal is not to see how big you can make it. The win is to see, can you reproduce other leaders to go plant as well? And so we definitely encourage that. So that is the life cycle of missional community, house church, reproduce. And then the next part, actually, before I go there, I'm going to go ahead and answer Miss Bailey's question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm in love with this, right?
Oh, I know, we talked.
Yes. So my question is though, because my inner circle, of course, are Christian people, and we have, we share the same beliefs in the way we live our lives. So in reaching out to my neighborhood, which I'm on fire about, I know I'm going to come across certain aspects. I mean, because people are living their lives, right? They're not in the church yet. So in our training, are we going to be taught how to navigate through those situations? Say, for example, like I would love to have a fall cookout next month in my driveway, invite my neighbors over. But under this umbrella, though, if I do something like that, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to want to bring alcohol or, just do the thing that they're used to doing in a cookout that's not a church cookout. So are we going to learn how to, I guess? Absolutely. Okay.
So I can jump to that right now. Like,
all right.
If it's not going to put you in jail, you have permission to do it.
Okay.
So here's the thing. This is not for the religious, because we're not trying to reach religious people. First of all, even in our own church, we have people from all kinds of expressions. A portion of the church will say that you're going to hell if you do that. A portion of the church will say, I do it every Sunday. That's what I call preference. That's based on cultural and denominational upbringing. You can go see churches in other parts of the country that is absolutely part of their worship experience. So we are going to hold things loosely because even in our own neighborhoods, we're going to reach Catholics, atheists, other denominations, and we're going to major on the majors and minor on the minors. So we're going to major on the gospel and what Jesus came to do. We are aware of the fact that just by even saying this means, will there be messiness? Yes. Will there have to be coming in, correcting, saying, hey, do this, but not that? We know that's going to happen because Paul had to do that with the church. And so that's just the nature of people and humanity. I talked to one lady who is in DC who's like, I want to open mine up and serve mimosas and invite my neighbors in to come watch Sunday service. I asked Pastor Johnson, what do you think? He's like, go for it. So here's the thing. I've talked to house churches that have planted in bars. I've talked to house churches that have planted on boats. So there are, literally all kinds of examples. And I know that's just one example, but people are going to ask, well, what about if I have a gay couple that comes in? I want to invite them in because we're here to love people. Just try to picture what would Jesus have done and how was he with people? And he was constantly, think about this. If it's upsetting religious people, you're probably pretty close to what Jesus was doing. So, and again, you have to know your culture. If you're in an environment where that's going to keep people from receiving the gospel, then you're going to do the opposite. So if I'm in an environment where Christians absolutely do not drink, I'm not going to be drinking because that means that's going to hinder and create an obstacle for people. And you see, Paul said he became all things to reach all people. So he knew the environment, the culture he was in. He knew what was a hindrance and what was a help, and he knew who he was going after. And so this is going to have to be Holy Spirit led. We're going to have to be very humble people. When I go in an environment and people didn't want to wear a mask, I didn't want to wear a mask. If I went to an environment and people were going to wear a mask, I wore a mask because it was about who am I trying to reach? And that's why I say we have to be a missional people, because the mission has to remind us why we're doing everything. And Paul walked into towns knowing he was going to get beaten, knowing that his life was going to possibly be threatened. And so he basically became all things to reach anyone. And I think if the church becomes more missional, we have a whole lot less to fight about. And so a lot of this comes down to, as a peacetime church, we get into the weeds arguing about stuff because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. But anyway, I hope that answers your question. We're going to have a ton of those questions as we go. We probably won't even get them all covered in training. It's probably going to be a week to week, all the time thing across the board, because we're going to be ministering to people and it's going to be messy. But some of that will be addressed in training, and we will create, like, here's a covenant, here's what I agree to do, here's what I agree not to do. And this is this is what it means to lead a Victory House church. And that kind of thing. We'll definitely cover that as we go. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but it felt like a really important question. So who else?
All right. Yeah, so if you guys have questions, make sure you can throw up a hand. You can do that in chat. But Aaron, I'm going to ask a question to maybe kind of warm things up too. So for those who are small group leaders, my small group, we do this anyway. What is that process transition? What does that look like for us?
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and answer that question and another question I heard in a different meeting along with it. So some people have said, my small group is all on board and we want to do this together. To that, I would say to everyone who wants to be missional and evangelistic in your small group and make this about reaching people and not about your group maintaining its thing, then God bless them. But also remember that every seat a small group person takes up may be a seat someone else can't take as well. And remember that this is about reaching the lost and not just your small group. So I think you need a core team, a launch team that's going to really own it. And you'll know very quickly whether or not people are going to own it with you or if they just like the idea of it. And so I think for those that want to go with you, say, this is us stepping out to go do this thing over here. So for my small group, I need to raise up a leader to take over that small group while I go plant a house church or, help them find another group. And so it's not like an instant cut thing. We're right now in September. It may be, hey, by the end of the year, I've been sharing my heart. This is where I believe God's leading me, and just want to let you know, as a small group, if you want to go do this with me, you can. If there's one of you that feels led to take over this group, I'm going to help you do that. Go through the small group channels, get you official as a leader, and make sure this group continues. And for others, if we don't have a leader who's going to take over, I may help you find another group for you to be in. But this is what God's calling me to do. So let's give like a 90-day kind of, ramp down sort of process or off ramp while you transition what God's calling you. The second part of the question I'm going to also answer is, well, can I serve in 2 or 3 different areas while doing house churches? I'm trying really hard not to use the word no as much as possible. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I'm making efforts to learn how to not say the word no so much. But with this, what I would say is, this is going to be, it's going to take a lot of your time. You're investing in other people's lives. And if something is going to burn you out, I would rather you give up serving one of your other areas because of the level of leadership that you're carrying, that if you quit your house church, you're shutting a church down in your neighborhood. If you quit a serving team, you may have to get somebody else to replace you. So I weigh those two things a little bit differently. So what I tell people is, I don't want you to get burnt out. I want you to be in this for the long haul. And so I don't want you to put more on your plate that you can handle. So I've been shutting things down. Like today was my last day as Victory's men's pastor. And so I'm full-time house churches now. I will do one more men's event in November. Originally, I had hoped to be able to do both. And I realized that that's not fair to anybody. And so, some of us may have to make that decision as well. Well, I can't serve on this team and do that. So there may be a season of preparation until God helps you close that door. But hear me, I didn't come out and say, you can't. I just said, we need to talk about it. The other part of that question that somebody else asked last week was, what about if I run into a Christian from another church in my community? Can they help me do this? And so what I would say to that, and that answer keeps evolving, is they can absolutely attend from another church. Our goal is not to take Christians from other churches. In fact, when you look at most church growth in America, it's really just Christians leaving one church to go to another. Most church growth in America is not reaching the lost. And so it's not our desire to reach other Christians. At the same time, when you start getting a heart for your community and other Christians in your community hear that and see that, God may be saying the same thing to them, and he may be doing something there. So he may be bringing you guys together for your neighborhood. From a victory standpoint, you know, if they're still somewhere else, we're probably not going to put them as a co-leader with you, because they're not necessarily going to sign into the covenant and go through all the leadership stuff that you did with Victory, but they can absolutely be a part of the mission with you. What we just want to do is make sure that we're not getting a reputation for, quote, other churches saying we're stealing members from their church. And I just want to be above reproach when it comes to that.
Hey, Aaron. So I do want to ask another question for the people here, maybe to even think about, because that's kind of like piggybacking on what you just said. So perhaps you know somebody who's not in this room tonight who may be great for this, right? Could you maybe kind of inform the people, what are the bare minimums? Like, what's the bare bones of getting started? So like the requirements to meet. So like if they were to go out and tell people, hey, I think you'd be great for this, you know, what would you tell them to share with said person?
Can one of you guys drop the leader URL in the chat for Victory leaders? So the minimum requirements would be the same as any Victory leader, and that's just beginning the leadership process. So that's going to be a background check, becoming a Victory member if you're not already. And there's actually a membership class coming up in the next week or two, I believe. You don't have to have this before training starts, but these are things that we want you to be doing before your launch. So background check, membership, an active tithing member. You can't teach what you don't believe and practice yourself. So those are going to be kind of the requirements for that. And then going through our basic leadership process, which I believe is just a couple of videos where you get to hear Pastor Johnson's heart for leadership at Victory and what it means to lead and serve. So that would be basically the Victory Leader Boot Camp would be those. And then we would, you know, obviously the training that you get through Victory House Churches. Thank you for sharing that. I see that there. What other questions do we have? Oh, I see Jada. Oh, sorry, I muted you again. Go ahead.
Do we need to, so I don't think I went through that class before we were doing this virtual meeting. Are we gonna go through those leadership classes before we start?
So it's really like short. You can literally just like watch the videos. So you could actually go do this. You could go to that link right now, and I'm going to do it obviously in the training as well. But if you wanted to not wait, you could start that whenever you wanted and just fill out the leadership application, and they're going to give you some videos to watch and all that, the background check, all that stuff kind of already gets initiated. If you haven't been regularly tithing, if you're online, I just begin to do that and, you know, make sure your name's on it and stuff, because again, as leaders, we want to be above reproach. We want to demonstrate to people what that looks like and be able to talk to that. So we'll teach you how to teach it, but we can't, you know, you got to live it. and so that would be the biggest thing. But yeah, you can start today. And if you have any questions, we can get with you directly. You can ask Joel, Eric, Lyndon, anybody on here as well.
Looks like D got another question for us.
Oh, let me unmute you real quick. Hold on. All right, see if you can unmute now. There you go.
There we go. Sorry. So just a little bit of transparency here. I took a break from serving everywhere up until maybe a couple of weeks ago because I wore myself out serving everywhere.
I hear you.
And I love the idea of having a house church. I just started my small group back up again.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Seriously. And even then I wasn't sure if that's what I should have done, because I knew this was coming and I knew forward was coming. But there was this part I was like, yeah, but there are people out there that's hurting, you know, they need community. And I see myself doing it all over again. And I'm not sure if my coach is even a part of this conversation with house churches to even get the guidance that I don't know. I don't know who to talk to. I'm sorry. I'm a little emotional this evening. I just, because I need to talk it out, but I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Well,
You know?
one, that's why we're here. Two, we can set up one-on-one, any of us with you and talk through this. There's a couple different options. One, I mean, obviously you got to pray. You got to see what is God saying this season. One option you can do, and I did this when I was leading the men's leadership teams at the campuses this year, because I knew I was stepping out, is every day I would remind them that this was temporary, that this was for a season for us to get to a level so that we can go out and be leaders. Everything we're doing as disciples is so we turn around and do it. So I would even say, hey, just so you guys know, in about 3 or 4 months, this is going to be over. And I would say it every time we met. It was like they got tired of hearing me say it. But I would also say one of you is going to be leading, or you're going to be sent out. So I started giving vision every time we gathered for what was going to happen. And I also started painting vision and inviting them if they wanted to go with me. So I'd say a couple of you might be going with me to plant house churches. One of you is going to take over this leadership team. And some of you are going to be leaving, going to other churches. And I would remind them the Great Commission, the mission, why we're here, and that this isn't for us to build a family and just stay together, that we're a family that's supposed to be reproducing and be fruitful and multiply. That if the disciples did that, none of us would be here. So I would just remind them that this is a season to get healthy. Some of you may be in different stages. If you feel called to go do this with me, let's go. One of you might be called to lead. And if not, again, we'll run this. We can say we'll run this till the end of the semester. We'll run this till January. And it may be a little bit of this going on. And that gives you a 3 or 4 month cycle. A small group semester lasts that long. And there's nothing wrong with that. I would typically ask a leader to serve for 6 months or a year, depending on what I'm asking them to do. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the biggest thing is praying and being led by the Spirit to know what God's saying to you in it. And to knowing that a yes to this right now, again, to even Bobby's question earlier, doesn't mean you're starting live on January 7th as a house church. It may mean that you're training and preparing while God is helping you fill in the blanks of what's missing. Hopefully that answered. So take the pressure off. The fact that you're here, you're responding to what God's put in your heart, and he's gonna lay out the steps of what happens next. And I mean, when I tell you what you're feeling, I'm feeling every week. A week ago, I have a new meeting every day that changes what I know about house churches. And so we're literally discovering it as we're going. And that's okay. So I want to describe to you what house church services are actually going to look like when we first start. So there's all different ways to have house church expressions. And I hope we will be able to expound on some of those as we go. But for this initial start, we're going to start with training wheels on our bicycles. And then later on, we'll learn how to do wheelies and jump off ramps. But for starting off initially, we're going to stream our services. And so you can literally just invite people in to come watch services with you. What we recognize is that that's probably going to be attractive to people who've already been churched, have an experience with some experience with Christianity, or people that have an amazing people who have an amazing relationship with you that are just willing to try things because they have good friendships with you. So what we're exploring right now is offering a service in a couple of different scenarios. So we would like to be able to offer a link that shows here's the entire service from beginning to end, worship, announcement, message. We'd also like to be able to offer a link of here's just the message. And what I'm currently working on is trying to figure out how to do a highlight reel of here's a 15 or 20 minute version of the message with just the bullet points and some highlights that we can go through quickly and then have a discussion about, because we know that we're reaching all different types of people. And some of us may have people that aren't willing to sit down and watch a 56-minute message. And others will have people that want to watch the entire hour and a half of a service. I'm going to be upset if you cut them short. So we want to be able to offer the different models based off of what you're doing. We're going to teach you how to do a Bible study in case your internet goes down and you can't show the service. Well, here's the Bible study that you would do. And then also here's some discussion questions. So after you watch the service, you can talk about it together. So what we have in mind is you're gathering, you're sharing a meal together. Maybe someone's telling us their testimony, or you're sharing some stories or recapping the week. Maybe last week people left and they said they were going to do something. And so this week when we gather, we're just seeing, well, how did it go when you did that thing? And, oh, you didn't do it? Well, you know what? We're believing you're going to do it this week. And we're all going to be praying for you to have the courage to do it this week. And so it's catching up with what happened during their week and encouraging them to apply what we're learning. It's going to be sharing a meal together, doing communion, praying together, watching a message. Maybe it's watching worship that way, or maybe it's us playing one of the video recordings from our Victory House worship thing, or maybe it's just you guys singing a hymn together, or maybe worship really is that we don't really like to sing in our living room and it's really awkward, so we're just going to tell praise reports and pray together. And so it's going to have to be a little bit of knowing your people in your neighborhood. The biggest thing is we want to give you guidelines and give you some good models that you can use, give you some freedom to choose a couple of different options, but then allow you to make sure that it matches the context of your environment well. Because one, we're honored that you're bringing victory and the gospel through victory in your neighborhood. And that in itself is an honor. So we want to recognize the fact that the people around you better than we do. What other questions? This is fun. We got about 9 more minutes. I see Victoria's coming back in there. Yeah, thank you. Naomi, did you have a question earlier? Okay, I had a question come in. How do you know how to get people in your neighborhood? So that is really what our training is going to focus on. More, January 7th, we'll go through, here's how to hit play, here's how to run a service. But to be honest, the hardest part is how do I get people in my neighborhood? And so those are the books and the trainings we're going to go through is that BLESS acronym. We're actually go through, there's an app we have called Bless Every Home. It tells you the names and addresses of the 40 people closest to you. And it also helps you manage praying for them, caring for them, sharing stories. So it's almost like a relationship management app for your neighbors, for you to be able to share the gospel with. We're going to talk about how to throw great parties, how to do life with people, and just how to have normal conversations. And here's the thing, when I begin to build a friendship with somebody and I get to know my neighbor's name and we get to talk more, I'm listening for things to connect about. And when we become friends, it's only natural for me to share things that I'm passionate about with friends. So if I want to talk about how much I like the Green Bay Packers, that's natural because that's something I care about. And my friends are going to have to hear that from time to time. And they're okay with that because they like me. It's also natural that I'm going to talk about my faith in God because it's such a big part of my life. And that's going to open doors so that when you're struggling, and that's going to happen at some point, and you're going to think, well, who can I talk to about this? You're going to think about your next door neighbor friend who has faith in God. And maybe he knows something about death or losing a job or a loved one or something like that. And so that's the work that we're really going to do is that kind of work. Okay, my question is there a specific type of person Victory is looking for to host churches, couples, families, etc.? Is this just open to God's plan calling? Okay, so thank you, Kara. So one, it is definitely open for people who are feeling called. We want you to have other people to plant with you, so you don't have to go by yourself. So maybe that's somebody you already know, somebody in your neighborhood, or maybe it's going to come through this training class where we find who's near you that can partner with you and put you in a cohort. What I would say is if you're in the middle of a crisis, you're in the process of going through a divorce, bankruptcy, something like that, this is probably a season where you can still come and learn, but it's probably the wrong season to be planting right now. If you know you're going to be moving in 30 days, go through the training, but let's not plant till you get to your new neighborhood, things like that. What I would typically say is when I look at Timothy and Titus and they're talking about the requirements of an overseer, that can be a very humbly intimidating scripture that we are all held to. But what I say is if you're actively living in sin, unrepentant, then it's the wrong time and season to be leading a house church. That doesn't mean you're perfect. I mean, if you are having an affair, if you are addicted to drugs, if you are doing something that's just actively, this is sin, you can't beat it right now, you're unrepentant, then probably not the best time to be pastoring other people. But outside of that, I am probably the gas instead of the brakes when it comes to this. So when you talk about the fivefold ministry, the apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers, and shepherds, I'm the one that's saying, go, 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 go. I look at how Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman and put her in ministry immediately, and he healed the demonic man and sent him back out in ministry immediately. So I'm probably the gas, and then luckily my shepherd friends come in and tell me, Aaron, easy there, Tiger. Let's hold it back a little bit. So yeah, I probably give away a lot of yeses. So did I answer your question, Karen? Kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of mostly.
What do you want to be more specific and maybe I can give more clarity?
No, because I didn't know if it was like a couples thing because it's myself and Naomi's my daughter.
Oh, awesome.
So it was myself and my daughter that were, interested. And I didn't know if I would need to get more people or how that worked.
No, I think the more people can get to go with you, obviously is helpful. If you had another couple or, somebody else with you, that would be helpful, but not necessarily like, it's not like you have to be a married family to do this. We're not saying that. Jada?
So originally I felt called to like do a small group, and then like I really felt led with Victory Church house churches too, and I just kind of bounced between like I don't know if I should do small group or Victory house churches since I've never done a small group before, and especially since like I've just started working, well, not just started, but I'm working at a homeless shelter. So I think that like that would help with the Victory house churches, but
Yeah,
I
really
don't
like that, so.
know if, I don't know if a small group would be better. I just don't know which one would be better.
So it comes down to who do you want to reach? Who are you feeling called to go after? If you're wanting to minister to women or people that are already in the church, then the small group's the answer. If you want to reach the people that are in the community that you're already working with, house church is the answer. So that may help you. Obviously, you've got to pray till you feel peace, because this is hard work. And if you didn't hear from God, the moment it gets harder, you're going to be like, did he really say, and so you've really got to be able to write down, like, did God say house church? And he just say go home, so I think we got to hear and like, God, are you calling me to this? I feel like you are calling me. And my experience has been, I just to start taking one or two small steps, and then God ends up showing me the next one. And so usually it doesn't look very good before the first step, and he doesn't show me the next one until that one. So we tend to gain momentum as we go, because that's how faith works. But if you're feeling pulled and unsure, not nervous, because we're all nervous. Like I feel afraid at times. God has to build me back up and remind me, hey, I called you to this. But if you're feeling like up in your heart, then like you just move into it, and he's going to make it clear. And it may be that people that you were going to reach in a small group may come alongside and partner with you on that. But again, I'm very biased at this stage of my life. I'm telling you to like go reach people out there. So you may have to ask somebody else, because I would be like, go for it. You can do this. And the least, if you've been to a small group leader, that experience will absolutely help you. But we're also going to teach you the things that we would teach a small group leader that'll help you be a good facilitator. So you'll get the best of both worlds. I can probably take one more question, and I'm going to talk about next steps as we wrap up here. Miss Victoria?
So Bobby and I are in kind of a unique for us position. So we're quasi missionaries. We've been serving in Jamaica since 2014, taking teams to the hills in Montego Bay, in a rural community. And then 2020, God fulfilled a promise from 2015 about giving us our own base in Jamaica. So we purchased the house in Jamaica in 2020 during COVID, and we've been renovating it since then. We thought it would take a year, and we're in year 2 going into year 3. So we're almost finished. Yes,
Yeah.
It's been a journey. We're almost finished. But we moved into a new community away from where we used to serve. And I mean, we knew that God wanted this house for this purpose, we didn't know it was going to be a house church, but we knew that he wanted us to have a house to do community with. My question is, because this is still new to us, Bobby is still in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here in Jamaica, making sure that the bill goes to code or, goes correctly.
Mm-hmm.
How will that work? Because even though we want to do this together, where God has us now, Bobby is still in Atlanta and I'm here.
Sure. So I think training, you'll both be able to do training both in different locations. Obviously, you're gonna have the prayer support, and you're in some ways, Bobby may be working as your coach. If he's not there with you, he may be coaching you and be the person you're going to for support there. Obviously, I know you're both very mature believers, and it just it's seasons. So I think about the same thing with Natalie and I. There are seasons when one of us is in the forefront more visible, doing more ministry, and the other one is supporting. And then there's seasons where occasionally we get to do it shoulder to shoulder, but usually one of us is out front and the other one is supporting the other one. And it kind of alternates in our relationship, which has been great. But sometimes when I'm in a support role, I'm not always that happy about it, but God has given me some practice on learning how to do it. So some of it might be a little bit of that, knowing that eventually you guys are, going to be able to minister shoulder to shoulder again. The point, if you're asking how would it work, it's not an issue for us over here. It just means that you're going to be carrying some of the hands-on weight, at least in a season. And I don't know what y'all's routines and traveling looks like, but you would still have our blessing for sure. And we would still support both of you. I don't know if that was enough of an answer, but
no, it was, because I was wondering if that would disqualify us, because we're into, okay. So you answered my questions.
Okay, good.
You sure you don't want to disqualify us?
That is not my job, sir.
No, it's all good, man.
Yeah. So here would be next steps for you guys. Yeah, I agree, Lyndon. Y'all do seem like an Aquila and Priscilla couple, and I'm cheating because I know y'all's story a little bit. Here would be next steps for everyone. One, if you haven't already, be praying. If you haven't watched the video where you heard Pastor Johnson and I talk about it on the victoryatl.com/housechurches site, you can go back there and hear from his own words a little bit of his thoughts about it, especially if you're still trying to decide. I'm going to ask for a lot of patience, like I said, as we figure this out. You can mark on your calendar if you want to go through this, that October 9th is when training begins. For those that are local, it'll be on site at Norcross at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. For those that are remote, we're going to get you the Zoom link and recording. If you haven't, if you have listened to this, prayed, you feel very confident that God's telling you to move forward to the next step, it doesn't mean that your house church is starting in October. It doesn't mean that you're even starting January 8th. It just means I'm going to continue down this path. The next step is to go beyond the interest form where I have your name and email. Now I'm going to ask you some questions, just like so we can get to know you better about where you want to plant. Do you have a family? Are you married? Are they on board with this? Because I would rather have you be a single woman leading a house church than a married couple whose husband doesn't want you to lead a house church. And so those things like that, or I have a roommate and they are anti-church, those are going to be some issues that we'll have to talk through, but every scenario is going to be unique. And that's why we need to be able to have conversations. So if you'll fill out that questionnaire, you should have received an email with that last night. You can see it in the chat right now, and I will be sending it out again to everybody. But you can start that. It's about 19 questions or so. And then from there, one of us, Eric or myself, most likely will reach out to you just to set up a phone call or a video chat where we can talk through this in more depth, answer more questions, talk about scenarios and that sort of thing. So that's the next step, is get the questionnaire going so we can kind of get a count of who's with us. And I'm going to start focusing my attention to the people that take the next step so that we can begin working on what's the dream, what's the vision. And over the next 3 months, we're hopefully going to hear from God about what he's saying to you. But at a minimum, I'm grateful you're here today. I'm grateful that you're learning about it. Again, it's just like kids. We're all going to be in different stages. Some of us are ready to leave the house right away. Some of us are still going to have to finish school, and all that. So I think it's going to be great for us just to take the step forward, get the training. You may get to January and say, hey, I'm not ready to launch a house church, but I can begin using the things I learned already in my community. I can just begin serving people that way. My hope is for each of you that the work that God has begun in you, he will bring to finish. He will bring to completion, and that we're going to see fruit come from this. And I believe that this is the future of that God is reforming his church in America, and that we are pioneering something that may seem scary and blurry right now, that it's going to become the norm in the future. And especially when I think about our kids' generation, I believe this is going to be the future of church for them. And I'm grateful that we are in a church like Victory that is willing to become hubs and support centers to plant churches all over the community and all over the world. So I love the vision. I love where we're going. And I love the fact that you were here to hear it and be a part of it. And if you have any other questions, I will stick around for a few more minutes and you can ask any of us. And of course, we're sending out the links to you right now. So Eric, will you pray over us as we get ready to dismiss? And then we'll stick around for a couple minutes for anyone who wants to ask more questions.
Yes. Father, as we end our time together, We're grateful. Again, we give you all the glory. You're the one who's behind it. And just like how Moses said, we don't want to go anywhere where you're not. So lead us, God. And we thank you that your presence is here. As we draw near to you, your word says that you would draw near to us. And so for every individual here, God, I pray that they would feel the nearness of your presence. I pray as they are contemplating, as they are seeking you, as they're praying, that you would give them clear direction, that you would order their steps. And I just pray again that they would have ears to hear you. I pray that as sheep, that we would know the voice of our shepherd. You are our shepherd. And so we thank you for that. And once again, out of our lips and with our hearts, we say that we love you. May you be glorified. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, I love you guys. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone wants to talk about anything.
Good night. Thank you so much, Pastor. This was great.
We'll see you later, D. Thank you.
All righty.
I do have one question. So we had talked about dedicating one room to, we thought, an intern or whatever, but what if a couple, they wanted to be do a house church, but they don't have a house, they live in an apartment or somewhere where they can't? Would there be a way for you guys to say, well, hey, Victoria and Bobby, they're going to do a house church. Victoria's there by herself. If you want to go there, is that an option?
Yeah, if I understand it correctly, I believe so. They would just need to go through, again, the victory process, membership, background check, training, all that. As long as they go through the process, anyone in the world can do this. The only limitation we have right now would be in countries where I can't speak the language yet, because there's only one of me right now. And so I can't give them resources that they need in their language, but and I can't coach them. But if they can speak English and they can go through the process and in line with Victory Statement of Faith and everything else, then we'll absolutely train and plant anybody.
Yeah, they speak English kind of in his patois.
Yeah, kind of English.
Well, and we would probably be coaching them through you guys. So because of that, so that would, that's where we would be relying probably more heavily on you than we would if they were directly coming through us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I love the way you're thinking.
I can help out as well for anyone who speaks Spanish. I'm fluent in both English and Spanish.
Oh, awesome. We're gonna put you to work because I'm not, and I need to be.
All right, I'm gonna say good night to you all.
Good night. Thank you,
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you, Malones.
Bye.
Good night.
Yes. Emailing. Yes, you guys will be receiving the links to your emails.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you,
I had a
Jada.
question. Sorry.
Go. What are you saying, Kiera?
I had a question. So sorry, let me turn up the volume on my phone.
No, you're good.
So how many people would it be like? Because right now it's 2 of us. So would it be like a certain amount of number? I'm a very structured, organized person. I'm like,
Sure.
give me the right people, if this is your plan. So
Yeah. So what we'd say is 3 more households. So if you and Naomi are one household, then it would be 2 more households before your house church. But that being said, that doesn't diminish. If there's one other person, the work is still the work, and we still recognize and affirm that. And that, again, there's no timeline on it. It's working towards it. It's like going and practicing during the off season. You're just doing it over and over again until it's game time. But the work will pay off. And when it comes down to numbers of like how many we're not going to measure success by how many people are in it. I had one of the influencers that was helping train me for house churches. I asked him that question. I said, so how many do you know what's your target for a house church? And he says, medium. I go, how many is medium? He's like, it's a little bit more than small and just under large. And I was like, all right. He's like, so every house is going to be different. Every context, every leader's capacity is going to be different. And so what may be a good number for you may be a bad number for somebody else, and vice versa. So
I think I had it wrong then. I thought you were saying it would need to be a group of leaders. That's what I didn't.
Oh, no. No, I would encourage you to have another leader with you. And especially if you have another leader that's not in the same household, that's even a better win, because you guys may run into situations that would keep you from being able to lead that week. You may get tired and need a break. If you see, Jesus always sent disciples out 2 by 2 because he knew that that the camaraderie was necessary, that when one gets tired, the other one can help. And then you see in Ecclesiastes, it says a stranded cord is not easily broken. When one falls down, the other can help them up. So there's a benefit in numbers, but we're not saying like you had to have 3 before you can start or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Hey, Aaron, can I say something too? I think
Sure.
there are some people who might have joined a little bit late, but just in case, if you didn't, just as a reminder, maybe this will alleviate or take some pressure off. Like, we're not measuring success based on like, oh, because you're a house church, this is successful. Like, I think the success is as you are becoming a missional community, like that's success. And
Yeah.
then if it just so happens to become a house church, that's like icing on the cake right there.
Thank you,
So
Eric.
like the
Yeah.
pressure is not like, oh my gosh, like we have to be a house church by January. That's not even it. Because again, just like how Pastor Aaron said, like that could be a year from January.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want that to be discouraging.
Yeah.
That could be a reality for some people, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Aaron, go ahead.
No, that's great. I was going to say that's the goal, is to plant the gospel. In fact, there's different seasons of life. If you're having a new baby, if you're getting married, you may say, hey, we can't put all the time and energy into this we want to yet. So we're going to start living out the rhythms of serving our neighborhood and let God control the timing. You know, if I'm a newlywed, my bride needs to get my best efforts, at least that first year. In the Bible, you see like the Levites, they wouldn't even let them go to war the first year because they wanted them to focus on their marriage, and it's new. And so, you know, I'd say ease into things. Don't take on necessarily a shepherding relationship in an official capacity, but doesn't mean you can't start doing the work of it. What are you gonna say, Lennon? You agree with it?
Yeah, I'm just like, amen, as a person who's about to get married.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, those are some seasons of just making sure that you've got people with you that can help carry it when you have to slow down. Some of the things we didn't talk about that I'll talk about in training is I really want people to build a rhythm of rest in, where maybe that's taking off 1 week a month just to be off. Because again, I'm not in it just to see how far and fast we can go. I want us to be in it for the long haul. So good question.
Hey, Aaron, one last thing, just because this is recorded, I feel like this is one of the meetings that no one has asked this question, so I'm just gonna ask it for them. So what does this mean about attending a campus?
Oh yeah, no one did ask that question. So you do not have to give up your campus. A lot of people have asked me that, and it's really important to know that if you are online campus, for you, it's really easy because now you just watch online campus with other people. If you physically attend a campus, then and you enjoy doing that, I encourage you, please continue to attend the campus, and maybe your house church meets on a Monday night. And so you come in, you spend time with your friends, you enjoy the worship environment, and then you're prepared to host your house church the next night. So in that sense, it's similar to a small group. It's just you're combining your church service and your small group at the same time. So that's a great question. Another question that nobody asked was, what do we do with kids? Which is a really big question. And for that, we're working on several different answers to that question. One, Victory Children's Ministry is already creating resources that you can use for children's ministry in your home. Some of it can be watching an online service. Some of it can be curriculum they can use. Some house churches may hire a babysitter. Some of them may rotate. A couple watches the kids this week and then another couple watches them next week, or there may be an older kid. So there's going to be as many answers as there are scenarios for that one. We'll definitely give out here some guidelines and principles to follow. But that's one of them. I think one of the advantages of house churches is that you can have the family involved. Kids can be in the room. They can hear the message. They can hear the stories. They can speak and share things that you can't do on a Sunday morning in a sanctuary. And so there's some advantages to that as well. And then what was the other question people like to ask that hasn't been asked? So children's ministry, attending my campus. I think that was it. So anything else? All right. Well, if you guys think of more questions, you can always reach out, email. Like I said, the next step is to fill out that questionnaire and get things rolling. We look forward to being able to have one-on-one conversations with you and talk through it, dream with you, and hopefully I get to see all of you on October 9th, either online or in person, as we kick off our first training session. So once again, thank you guys. Thank you, Eric, Joel, Lyndon, and everybody that supported tonight. And thank you everyone that jumped in, and I can't wait to see what God's going to do in us and through us as we go to reach our neighborhood and see God's greatness emancipated in the community around us. So good night, get some rest, and thank you for being here.
Good night. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. Bye.